let go of trying to understand everything I'm trying to tell you. If you kind of, I'm not saying don't be attentive, just like, sort of look off to the side and not pay attention, but if you try to keep up and follow, there's going to be and it's going to happen anyway, you're just going to have points where you're just completely wiped out. If you can just, and it might be something different for you, be aware of your breath and be aware of how you're feeling and not necessarily having to completely comprehend everything that I'm saying, but being aware of how you're feeling and how almost like the vibration of your body as I'm talking about it, rather than the understanding. You'll notice that number one, you're not going to phase out quite so much. And number two, 2 hours from now, you'll go, I have no freaking clue what this guy just said since 7 o'clock, but I feel it. I'm feeling something. That is going to do more for you and take you further than having a comprehension. As an example, back when I was a teenager, I was an oddball in the early 90s. In my late teens, I was talking about, not quite this deep, but stuff like this when I was 19. And nobody my age, they were still, passing out, drinking beer and stuff. I never did anything like that ever. But I was hanging out with people that were like 80 and 90 years old who knew like these amazing people like, Ernest Holmes and the Fillmores and Thomas Troward and Napoleon Hill and Robert Collier. And they knew all these like legendary figures from the early part of the 20th century in spirituality. And I was getting like just information basically secondhand from the source. But I spent 2 years with a group that Marianne Williamson had in New York City studying A Course in Miracles. And I got to see, and it was right when her Return to Love book had just come out, and it hadn't really completely kicked in yet. And then we got to watch over the course of several months that it went from, a few dozen to like a few hundred to like a few thousand. And it was interesting to watch that. And it never actually waned before I'd moved down to Florida. But I noticed that some people would study the Course in Miracles, and they would study it, and they would look at it, and they would read it over and over and over and over again. But rather than feeling it, they would try to understand what it said. And then they would get a good understanding mentally of what was on that page. And then there was this sort of Course-a-maniacs in a way, where they just understood it mentally, and they would almost like stiff arm you and like shove you down on the ground and say, listen, the Course in Miracles says spirit is all that exists. Why can't you understand? Kind of like, I'm not implying that people do that with the Bible, but it's, and then there was people who literally, and you can consider this if you've ever been in a Course study group or any kind of spiritual philosophy. And then there would be people like, the beautiful little woman who would show up, and the group leader would be reading whatever it is, and she'd be sitting there going, like lost in a lot of ways, not understanding what that leader was saying. But yet, when she would talk about the Course, you would feel it in her heart, and she was putting it into practice, even though mentally she may not have had some sort of great command of it. Me, I'd rather be the one who I like a little bit of both, but I would much rather be the one who had the heart part rather than the mental part.